Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where as always we learn through the misfortunes of others. I am your host, Uncivil Law, and we are here with a verdict announcement that should be coming in a few minutes relating to the Letecia Stauch trial. This case has been ongoing. We covered this case a lot more in its early days. We did some stories relating to this when the event first happened. We haven't been following the trial super closely, minute by minute, but it has been a roller coaster for sure. This woman has pled not guilty by reason of insanity, and so the jury will return a verdict in a few moments telling us what they think about it. My expectation, based on my information and based on my limited review, is the jury will return a verdict of guilty. I think that she knew what she was doing. She showed planning, premeditation. She showed attempts to cover up the scene and just attempts to hide the crime. So I think that the evidence does not really support a not guilty by reason of insanity verdict. I think the better verdict here is guilty, but we will see what the jury has to say about this. So first of all, we're just going to do, while we're waiting for the jury announcement to come in, let's just do a brief rundown of the timeline of this murder, because obviously this has been going on for a while and we just need to catch everyone up to speed. So here on the right is a picture of the woman involved, Letecia Stauch, and on the left is a picture of her stepson, who she is alleged to have murdered. And we're going to show a little bit about the timeline about what happened here in terms of this. So this is all happening in Colorado. She reported him missing to authorities. There was a 6-week search that ended up discovery of his body 1,500 miles away in Florida. So an attempt to hide the crime, it seems. This woman went quite a bit out of her way to try to dispose the body well away from the crime scene. So we found his body 1,500 miles away under a Florida overpass, trying to tie this. So yeah, I mean, this seems like that's a lot of consciousness of guilt. The Colorado woman, of course, is accused of murdering her stepson, Gannon, and reporting him missing. And here is a brief timeline of the case. We start in January of 2020. So this case has been going on for about 3 years at this point, from start to stop, assuming the jury, has a verdict and has reached a unanimous verdict, which it looks like they have. It looks like we'll finally reach some sort of resolution today. So I suppose we could get straight not guilty by reason of insanity, or guilty, or I suppose a hung verdict, and we'll find out which of those we are in, but it doesn't look like a hung verdict. So anyways, Letecia Stauch in January 2020 calls 911 to report her stepson Gannon, who is 11, is missing just before 7 p.m. She's instructed to call the non-emergency number. When she does, she can't name any of Gannon's friends or their parents. She's also unable to allegedly recall where any of her friends or where any of the friends live. So that's a little bit, that could mean a lot of things. Obviously, a parent in a moment of crisis might not be able to recall things, but she can't recall anything apparently. Deputies arrive at the home around 10 p.m. and she gives permission to search the property. Investigators write in an affidavit they believe Letecia murdered her stepson shortly after 2 p.m. And the affidavit says just before 5 p.m., Letecia asked her daughter to pick up carpet cleaner, trash bags, and baking soda from the store. So, showing some sort of desire to cover up the crime. Let's get some carpet cleaner. Let's get some trash bags. Let's get some baking soda to get rid of the smells, get rid of the liquid, get rid of the stains. So consciousness of guilt. Letecia, okay, so on the 28th, Letecia drives her car to a short-term parking lot at an airport and rents a Kia from Avis. She then uses the rental vehicle to pick up Gannon's father at the airport around 9. She returns to short-term parking lot 7 p.m. and allegedly moves the body to an unknown area to hide the body, somewhere near the airport, presumably. Investigators believe that Gannon had been in the car because Letecia wanted to avoid her husband discovering her son's body. So the son was in the trunk of the car, presumably in these garbage bags. And, it was like, well, I can't open the trunk of the car for him to put the luggage in from the airport and stuff like that, right? So I have a rental car. So we drive the car and rent a Kia to pick up the father so that we don't have to use our own car. She then picks up her mother in her own car at 10:30 p.m. based on cell phone records. So for whatever reason, she couldn't get rid of the body right away. It's still in the trunk of the car. She rents a rental car. She drives the husband, presumably to the house, then presumably returns the rental car or somewhere else and makes some other arrangement with the body, presumably. It looks like we're getting some sound. So we will, I'm just hearing that they're just talking internally in terms of the network. So I'm just waiting for, but yeah, they're coming back pretty soon here.
Court will call 20 CR 1358, People versus Letecia Stauch. Record should reflect the jury is not present in the courtroom. I've been advised that the jury has reached verdicts in this case. Before I bring the jury in, I want to remind everybody of a couple of things. First of all, if you have a phone out, put it away, unless you are in this front row. In addition, I know that this is an emotional case. I get that. I understand that, really, I do. But this jury has worked hard. So regardless of whether you agree with or don't agree with their verdict, you need to exercise appropriate decorum. So let's not have any emotional outbursts or anything like that. And I think we're good to go. Let's go ahead and bring the jury in.
All right, guys.
Now that I have you doing something else.
We'll see how this rounds out.
Okay. But they all seem to be on. It doesn't matter to me. I see it. So long as it's broadcasting, I just wanted to make sure that was not the issue.
I think she's guilty, people. I think she's guilty based on all the information that's available.
All rise for the jury, please.
But we'll see if the jury agrees.
Thank you. May all be seated. Court will recall 20 CR 1358, People versus Letecia Stauch. Record should reflect the jury has returned to the courtroom. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I see that juror number 5, that would be you, has all the instructions and things like that. That's usually a tip-off to me that you might be the foreperson. Are you, in fact, the foreperson? And has the jury reached verdicts in this case? All right. If you would hand the instructions and the verdict forms to Mr. Sproul, please. Thank you.
So the judge is obviously going to thumb through it now to make sure that the forms are filled out and in correct order, because occasionally they're not. It does happen. Like, okay, go back, try again. So make sure that they're correct.
All right, the verdict forms do appear to be in proper order. I will have a question for you because there's some extra writing on here, but I think I understand what's going on. So with respect to count number 1, charge of murder in the first degree after deliberation, we, the jury, find the defendant Letecia Stauch guilty of count number 1, murder in the first degree after deliberation. With respect to count number 2, charge of murder in the first degree, child under 12 by a person in a position of trust, we, the jury, find the defendant Letecia Stauch guilty of count number 2, murder in the first degree, child under 12, position of trust. With respect to count number 3, charge of tampering with a deceased human body, we, the jury, find the defendant Letecia Stauch guilty of count number 3, tampering with a deceased human body. With respect to count number 4, charge of tampering with physical evidence, we, the jury, find the defendant Letecia Stauch guilty of count number 4, tampering with physical evidence. I wanted to ask the jury, or actually the foreperson, there is some extra writing on here with respect to question number 1. There's a cross through and some initials. And then on part B, there's also a cross through with initials. Was that signifying that you were not answering that and you intended to answer guilty as to that charge?
Yes, sir.
All right. And is that what you intended with all of the other verdict forms?
Yes, sir.
All right. With that, does either side wish to have the jury poll the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor.
Pull him. Definitely pull him.
All right. What this means is that this is a process that is sometimes requested by the attorneys following a verdict to make sure that everybody has agreed on all parts of it. So I'll go down the row, starting in the back. Juror number 1, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 2, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 3, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 4, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 5, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 6, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 7, is this and are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Juror number 8, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 9, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 10, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 11, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 12, is this and are these your verdicts?
Your Honor.
Yes.
I want to thank all of you
Okay.
for your service. Jurors don't get a lot of training. However, you all were selected because you were willing to be open-minded and impartial, and were willing to make decisions based on the facts and the law. You, the jury, heard and saw the evidence. You paid attention all day, every day. Someone else may tell you they disagree with or they disagree with your verdict or some aspect of your service. They may want to express their opinion on the matter. However, we didn't ask them for any of their opinions. We asked you for your judgment. We asked you for your verdict based on the law and based on the evidence. Someone else may tell you they think they're better and smarter and more intuitive than all of you were. Ignore them. As a judge, rarely does a day go by that I don't make somebody in the courtroom mad. The fact that some people may disagree with your verdict or the law only means that those who disagree with you were not carefully selected to be fair and impartial. They did not take an oath to follow the law and to judge all of the facts, and they see it differently from you because they didn't see it all from the perspective you did. And they did not discuss the facts with 11 others who were also fair and impartial and sworn to follow the law. You decided this case. This verdict is your verdict. And this is the verdict in the case. No poll, no approval or disapproval, and no press analysis changes that fact. This is the verdict in the case. The press or someone else at some point may wish to talk to you. We live in a world of exceptional voyeurism in reality TV, and this is about as real as it gets.
This is a
They may
very,
try to dissect the evidence, your thought
it's a
process,
very,
and your decision.
interesting way of phrasing this
It's a free
particular
country.
speech. I mean, there's nothing
Anyone
wrong
can
with
ask
it. It's
you
just
anything
it's
about
just
your
a very
verdict.
interesting, it's
You
an
can
interesting
answer
way of
if
phrasing
you
this
choose.
speech.
They can also, however, respect your privacy and allow you to contact them only if you want to talk to them. And if you don't want to, you don't have to talk to anyone about your verdict. If you do talk with someone, you can tell them as little or as much as you like. Someone may even ask you to give an affidavit regarding some aspect of your jury service. You're free to give an affidavit. You're free to decline to give an affidavit. That is a personal decision you are entitled to make. If anyone
I've never
continues to
really
talk to you
heard of
after
an
you have told them
affidavit,
you
but-
do not want to speak about the matter
Okay.
or becomes critical of you or your jury service, please report that incident to me. Again, I want to thank you very much for your service. Without honest people of our community serving on jurors, we cannot secure the right to a jury trial in this country. And it's a very valuable and a very important right. I want to leave you with some language from a case that was decided by the United States Supreme Court in Louisiana versus Duncan. In that case, an individual was denied the right to a jury by trial, or a trial by jury, sorry. And that case went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court sent it back to the state of Louisiana. And it said, you need to give this man what the Constitution requires, which is a trial by jury. And when it sent the case back to Louisiana, it said, we believe that trial by jury is fundamental to the American scheme of justice. Trial by jury is more than an instrument of justice and more than
This is a
one wheel of the
very
Constitution.
long-winded version of this speech.
It is the lamp that shows that freedom lives.
Ah,
Without your dedication and sacrifice, that lamp would not shine as brightly as it does. So I truly thank you for your service. You are now discharged with the thanks of the court. And for the
Okay.
last time, all rise for the jury, please.
that was a very long-winded version of that speech and a very, I don't know, imagery-heavy version of that particular speech. It's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It was just funny because it was like went on for a while. And it was very imagery-heavy. I'm like, okay. So he has a very, he has a particular style to this particular speech. All right.
Thank you. You may all be seated.
Fine.
I don't know how you want to proceed on sentencing. I do need to talk to the jury for a few minutes because I need to tell them some things about security issues, counseling issues, and things like that. So I do need to talk with them for a few minutes. I also didn't know if the family, the prosecution, anybody wanted to have some time to process the verdicts. I also understand that everybody's been here for 5 weeks, so I get that part too. So I'm open to whatever you want to do with respect to sentencing, but I probably am going to need at least a half an hour with the jury.
I think that would be appropriate, Judge. The people are obviously ready to go to immediate sentencing. I believe defense is as well. And,
Okay.
and I can tell you that the family's been thinking about this day for over 3 years. They're ready to go to sentencing as well.
Okay, then give me about 30 minutes and we will come back and proceed to sentencing at that point in time.
All right.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting for the formal sentencing, which will be life without parole, by the way, because it's mandatory, so not a lot to discuss. But while we're waiting for that, we'll go over the timeline and talk a little bit more about the case. Yeah. When it's sentencing immediate, yeah, they're going to do it in a half hour. So the judge said, yeah, how do you want to do it? You want to do it now? You want to do it later? Prosecutor's like, now it's good. Great. Let's do it now. Okay. So yeah, we'll do it in a half hour. So the judge is gonna talk to the jury for about a half hour, talk about some security issues or logistics or whatever, and do a little debrief, which is not uncommon. Half hour's a little long, but for a serious charge like this, like a murder case, do a little debrief, a little talk with the jury. Not uncommon for a judge to say something, so fine. It was guilty, by the way, across the board. In case for those of you who missed it, it was guilty across the board. So not unexpected at all. So we were just going through this timeline before the jury came back. We were just going through the timeline. So we'll pick up where we are. We're early in the case, early in the timeline, just going through this stuff. So just to recap where we were, Letecia Stauch calls 911 to report her son missing. She then drives her car to a short-term lot and rents a car to pick up her husband from the airport. The idea being that her deceased stepson was in the car that she drove, and so obviously she couldn't pick up her husband in that. So she rents this car and then picks up her mother in her own car at 10:30 p.m. So moves the body around or something. The rental car, so that's where we left. The rental car is returned the next day. So maybe she puts the body in the rental car and then picks mom up in her own car. Maybe that's what happened, but that's where we're at, right? So we're at the initial report. The initial report is out. Child is missing. We have a report that she asks her daughter to pick up some cleaning supplies, some baking soda, some carpet cleaners, some trash bags, goes to pick up her husband at the airport, rents a car, and then returns the car the next day. That's where we're at in the timeline. Letecia meets with investigators at the El Paso Sheriff's Office. She arrives 2 hours late, and with her vehicle freshly washed, the vehicle that possibly had the son in the trunk, so had the car washed. Apparently someone noticed. The affidavit says that she arrived with sheets of paper and proceeds to tell investigators she'd been held at gunpoint by someone on the day Gannon went missing, saying the man sexually assaulted her and then abducted Gannon. So we went from missing person to, sexual assault, abduction. She says she cleaned up the area before reporting her son missing. Why? Why would you do that? It seems like a strange thing to do. Investigators seize the cell phone and apply for a warrant to take DNA. They then say Letecia begins to stick tissues down her pants and say she's struggling to breathe and is rushed to the hospital. There are no life-threatening health concerns. Upon being released, she slips out of the building without telling members of law enforcement, which she's not under arrest at this point, so, that's fine. But it's weird. It's very weird behavior. So the next day, following this thing, the child status is changed from runaway to endangered missing child. Status allows the Bureau to reach out through the FBI and National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and the search starts underway. February 1st, so this is 2 days later, Letecia and her daughter begin to drive cross-country, according to testimony, which seems like a strange thing to do in the immediate aftermath of your missing stepchild. Let's do a cross-country road trip. Seems like strange timing to me. Apparently, according to the testimony, they said in September 21, she heard they rented a van for the drive and that the remains were in the van. So we're doing a cross-country road trip with deceased son in the cargo area, I guess. A neighbor comes forward and claims that his surveillance footage contradicts Letecia's versions of events. His video shows an adult, a younger person, getting into a car outside the residence, but only later an adult seen getting out of the car. February 4th, Letecia arrives in Florida and checks into a hotel just 3 miles away from where the body is later found. So, yeah, that's kind of pretty coincidental. You know, that's pretty coincidental. We did a cross-country road trip, and we checked into a hotel that's just 3 miles away from where the body is found. What a strange coincidence. Of all the gin joints in all the world, you know? Just happened to check into this one. Okay. February 13th, search efforts again and expand into neighboring Douglas County. We're still back in Colorado at this point because, you know, Letecia tells her husband 5 different versions of events that relate to this. When the police come to her house on the 27th, the abductor was still in her residence. She tried to signal police deputies that someone's in the residence. So, according to her now at this point in the story, because we're changing the story. So now the story is she had the police come over, right, to say, hey, my child is missing. You know, the police come over, and when the police come over, hey, my child is missing, the abductor is still in the house. Okay? So she's like, hey, police, come over to my house. My child has been abducted. And according to her at this point, the abductor is still in the house. Okay. She said that she was assaulted by a man and he abducted the child. She knew the man's identity because she saw a paper in his identification card fall out of his pocket. Apparently, according to this version of the story, a man followed her from Petco and at some point was laying in the middle of the road in front of the car. When she stopped to avoid running the man over, he jumped in the car and made him take home and sexually assaulted her. This doesn't sound like a very plausible series of events. I have to say, this would strike me as a little bit difficult to believe. If I'm hearing the police, I'm like, okay. Letecia and Gannon were apparently near County Ride Road and Highway 105, riding a bicycle in the area and fell off, hit his head, and then was abducted by a man. So, where is he abducted from? I'm so confused. Letecia stated the blood in the corner of the room was a combination of hers and Gannon. In her explanation, or in this explanation, she stated the abductor penetrated her and Gannon with an object. Additionally, she was tied up at some point, and the abductor was still present during the visit from the police that night. I'm seeing some holes in the storytelling, people. I'm seeing some holes in the storytelling. I'm having some issues here on the story. I'm not really buying this version of the story, guys. Letecia calls a company called fakepolygraph.com. There's a website called fakepolygraph.com. Yes. Apparently, there is a website called fakepolygraph.com. I can't get to their website right now. Their page isn't loading for me, but apparently there is a place called fakepolygraph.com. You can buy a fake lie detector result. I mean, I'm not sure why I'm surprised, but apparently I am. So, okay. So she went to fakepolygraph.com, which for me is not loading right now. So unfortunately, Uncivil Law will be unable to buy a fake polygraph, which I think I will do. Oh, yeah. Oh, for $60. We definitely have to do this, I think. I think we have to get ourselves a fake polygraph. I'm not sure what we want our fake polygraph to be about, but I think we have to buy one. Let's learn a little bit more about fakepolygraph.com. Hold on. Share with you the website of fakepolygraph.com. Get a real, fully verified fake polygraph test certificate proving you've taken a polygraph. You choose the questions, location, and results. We'll send you a fully verified report within 1 business hour. Wow, what a turnaround. The fake polygraph report is emailed from a local and real polygraph company. If your partner calls the real company, the polygraph's customer service will confirm the test. Wow. The polygraph reports are 3 to 4 pages and the exact same as industry standard. They'll be sent directly from the real polygraph company. The local company branding and contact details are printed on the polygraph. You provide a list of questions, results, location, and date where it supposedly took place. A local polygraph company will email you the results. If your partner calls the authentic company, they'll be asked for your name, date of birth, and examination. The polygraph customer service will confirm and verify the details. We guarantee there's no link between the fake and real polygraph company. I'm confused. If there's no link, then how are they coordinating this? I'm confused. Whatever. But I can provide truth for husband-wife problems, boy-girlfriend problems, family and friends problems, issues on nights out, disagreements, novelty situations, and infidelity issues. I murdered my stepson, I'd like to note, is not one of the things on the list. But maybe that's part of the novelty situation service. You can get a standard one for $60 or bespoke for $300, apparently. We can order our fake polygraph today. Okay. Fake polygraph, create your own truth. Okay. Well, I'm not 100% sure if this is real or a honey trap, but well, it's an option apparently. Maybe I'll ask them to fake my polygraph results. Who do we want to fake that we killed? I don't know. Maybe Rob or somebody. We'll say that we'll say that we murdered our friend Rob, the unicorn, and see if we can get some fake results or something. That'll be good. All right, carrying on anyway. This thing's ridiculous. Okay, so she calls a company called fakepolygraph.com, hoping to get the results of the test she took her, but told her report was blocked by management based on the contents of the question. So apparently they have standards over there at fakepolygraph.com. She's also told by an employee that with illegal activities, they have a right not to send the report. So, okay. So, all right. Okay. February 21st, it's nice to know fakepolygraph.com has some standards. Apparently they have some standards. Search reports are suspended in February 21. February 28th, a judge signs off on the arrest warrant. March the 2nd, she's arrested in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I mean, South Carolina is nice, but Myrtle Beach is very touristy trap. It's been a long time since I've been to Myrtle Beach, though. Maybe it's improved. But my memories of Myrtle Beach are very, very touristy trap. Surfside USA touristy trap. Big time. Apparently also, Myrtle Beach has the highest per capita mini golf anywhere. They also have a lot of go-kart tracks. So if you're into mini golf or go-karting, Myrtle Beach may be for you. But it's a little touristy trappy, at least in my memory of the thing. You know? Anyways, March the 4th, Letecia makes national headlines after she allegedly attacks a deputy while being extradited back to Colorado from Myrtle Beach. It still is. I was there last month. Okay, so it hasn't changed very much in the last 20 years. It's still a little touristy trappy. 20 years later. Mini golf and a margarita? Yeah, we should definitely do a meetup in Myrtle Beach. That'd be cool. We'll do a Myrtle Beach meetup. That'd be good. Anyways, carrying on. Letecia is now being extradited back to Colorado from Myrtle Beach. That's a long road trip. March the 5th, Al files for divorce, saying the marriage is irreconcilably broken. She also states that his wife is in South Carolina awaiting extradition. So apparently the murder of the stepson was a bit of a downturn in the marriage. Yeah. I'm not sure how standard marriage vows work with the murder. Richer, poor, sickness, health, better or worse. How do standard marriage vows and murder work? I don't know. But these are questions, I suppose. March the 11th of 2020, she's formally charged with first-degree murder. March the 17th, the body is discovered in Florida. So she's charged with murder before discovery of the body, which is, charging murder without a body, So it's like, okay, we're ready to prove murder without a body. But then we discover the body, apparently. Bridge inspectors with the Florida Department of Transportation found a suitcase under the bridge, and upon opening it, found what appears to be a boy's body. So she left the boy's body in a suitcase under a bridge. Yeah. The son had apparently been shot in the jaw, stabbed in the chest, and suffered a skull fracture, and had defensive wounds and a bullet lodged in the skull. June the 4th, a probable cause affidavit reveals that Letecia attempted to escape from jail and had allegedly devised a plan to break through a window of her cell using a broom handle. January the 11th of 2021, a mental health evaluation is submitted. February the 26th, a judge grants a motion to represent herself in court. April the 30th, 2021, the divorce is finalized. How sad. May the 3rd, apparently, she changes her mind, appointed some new public defenders. September 23rd, judge rules the case will go to trial. February 11th, changes her plea to not guilty by reason of insanity. March the 20th, jury selection begins. And today, May the 8th, we have a verdict of guilty. And she'll be sentenced in about 15 minutes to life without the possibility of parole, which is mandatory, which is one of the reasons that we can do sentencing right away, because there's not a lot of discussion. So, yeah, all that stuff. All that stuff. So, and I covered this in the early days of it. I covered it when it was like brand new. Well, maybe not brand new, but at least like when she was being charged, probably. I covered this case. I haven't really followed it since, but I covered it when she was being charged. And, and I followed a little bit of it on the trial, and yeah. So we're going to do sentencing in 15 minutes. So we're ready to go. So yeah, we're, judge is just talking to the jury a little bit, doing a little post game Q&A or whatever, and talking to them about some security issues, I guess, that whatever. So not guilty by reason of insanity is really rare. I don't know if it's still true, but my memory of it was that it works about 0.5% of the time. So 1 out of 200 times. So not guilty by reason of insanity is pretty hard, and all this deception and all this consciousness of guilt goes a long way to showing a lack of insanity, right? If you were truly insane and then popped into sanity, I don't know that you would decide to rent a van and take your son in what presumably is a suitcase to dispose of him under a bridge in Florida. So motive is unclear. Did they ever put forward a motive? I mean, motive isn't legally required. It's just always nice to know. I don't know if any motive was officially presented. She was tired of taking care of him. Yeah, I mean that makes sense as a motive. Makes as much sense as anything else. It wasn't her biological child, and she had wound up burdened with more responsibility for caring for the child than she was expecting, and she did it because she was tired of caring for the child. I mean that's a possibility. Apparently, at one point, she claimed that her 11-year-old son had it out for her. To the recollection of her dad, Al, the allegation involved his son, Gannon, threatening the defendant, Letecia, with a knife. Father said he never saw anything like that, and no evidence that Gannon had it out for the defendant. So apparently, at one point, Letecia said the 11-year-old tried to attack her with a knife. Uh-huh. Which certainly isn't impossible. 11-year-olds sometimes murder. But, if it was self-defense, the reaction to this in like taking the body 1,500 miles away to dispose of under a bridge in Florida seems like a very weird way to go. So if it's like, oh, it was self-defense, the 11-year-old was trying to stab me, and so I shot the 11-year-old and stabbed it several times in self-defense, and then in reaction to that, then took the body 1,500 miles away in a suitcase and left it under a bridge. See, it doesn't follow, right? There's a problem because it doesn't follow next in the story, right? It's like if you want a story, right? If you're writing a story, it's helpful if the next thing in the story follows from the previous things in the story, right? That would be great. So if the story is the 11-year-old was trying to stab me, and so I shot the 11-year-old and stabbed it in self-defense, okay. And then the next thing in the story is, and then I transported the child's body 1,500 miles away and left it under a bridge. It doesn't really flow. It has flow problems. It doesn't really. There's a sequence break. So it doesn't really quite make sense. So yeah. So also it was a guy who kidnapped him. Also, he's just missing. Also, he was kidnapped from the middle of a road. Also, it was the bad guy who sexually assaulted me and him, and he was in the house when the police came, and they searched, but they didn't find him. Ugh. So there are some problems with storytelling. So Occam's razoring this, Occam's razoring this. It might be that she committed the murder, or it's that I was insane. Yeah, Occam's razoring this. It might just be that she's evil. Yeah. So okay. Isn't that reasonable doubt? No, that is not reasonable doubt. None of that is even a little bit reasonable on any level. No. This is not anything. This is not any shades of anything reasonable. No. Not even a little bit. No. None of that is even a little bit reasonable. No. Not even a little. The 11-year-old Gannon could have probably written a more convincing story. You could have asked Gannon could have written a better story than this. Excuse me 1 second. I'll be right back. Yeah, calls are annoying sometimes. Yes, it's live, Mark. We're back. Sorry about that brief diversion. Anyways, yeah, so I love the calls when I'm streaming. She'll get that vacation she's been looking forward to. Yeah. She gets an all expense bed and breakfast. Yeah. And it's a very secure bed and breakfast, so you know, it's nice. All expenses paid with personal attendance. 3 meals a day. Yeah. For life. It's a good deal. And she might have some friends in her head too. And she gets to make new friends. New friends with new and interesting people. So yeah, we're just waiting for the formal sentencing to come in. So they're saying 3 minutes, but who knows? It was an estimate, right? Yeah, apparently there's some sort of counseling for the jury. I don't know anything about that. That seems like a Colorado state specific thing. I imagine it's not specifically for this trial. I don't think that. It seems like that's some sort of Colorado thing. I've never really heard of counseling for juries, but I guess, you know, maybe there's some mechanism for that. So, you know, jail is too good for her? Nah. You know, the fact that she has to wake up every day at looking at a concrete wall, I can live with that. What's the next big trial? The next big trial is probably the suitcase murder trial with the stuffing the boyfriend in a suitcase. And then, of course, the OnlyFans murder trial. So I'll probably cover at least one of those. Will be the case. Yeah, death penalty is not an option, not in Colorado. It's part of a federal victims advocacy funding grant. Okay, well, thank you for letting me know. Yeah, so we're just kind of waiting around to see what's happening here. Am I in favor of the death penalty personally? I don't think the arguments against the death penalty are as good as I don't think the moral arguments against the death penalty are as good as the people who oppose the death penalty for moral reasons think they are. So I don't think the moral arguments against the death penalty are as strong as advocates on moral grounds. So my objections are more pragmatic in nature than moral. I think that so it's a question more of like, is whatever, so if you're comparing the death penalty, so mine's more pragmatic, it's more balanced. So if you look at if you sort of tally up all the benefits that you get from a death penalty versus all the benefits you get from life imprisonment, right? So you're measuring the delta because that's what you're concerned about, right? This is how I think about it, right? So like if you imagine all the benefits you get from the death penalty versus all the benefits you get from life imprisonment, what we're measuring is the delta, right? What additional benefits are we getting from the death penalty that we're not getting from life imprisonment, right? So what's the delta? How much additional stuff are we getting? So it's like, okay, so that's the first calculation. It's like, what is the net benefit to the death penalty? And then, and pragmatically, because I'm thinking about this pragmatically, like what is the net benefit to the death penalty? And then it's like, so there's your benefit side. So what's your cost, right? Because it's a cost benefit analysis. What's the cost? What is the delta in the cost between the two? And you can measure cost in a lot of different ways, obviously. You can measure that financially. You can measure it in terms of efficiency. You can measure it in terms of burden on the system. You can measure it in terms of certainty. You can measure it in terms of a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different ways to measure cost. And so, at least to my mind, I think that the net benefits are not sufficient to make up the net costs. I think the net costs are too high. So I tend to oppose the death penalty for more pragmatic reasons than moral reasons. So there's an answer for you. Maybe not the one you expected, or maybe the one you did expect, depending on how well you think about my logic. So, yeah. Yeah. And I think, yeah, but you see, I don't think Nick's argument is as good as he thinks it is. Right? I think, yeah, so like this argument doesn't do as much for me as it does for Nick. So Nick says you can't trust the government with that power, especially what we've seen in cases with evil prosecutions. I don't think that concern, to my mind, is sufficiently different versus the death penalty. Because again, you're measuring it against its nearest alternative. Right? So if the question is, can the state do this competently? Right? Is this subject to abuse? Is this subject to things? I think the answer is yes. I just don't think the answer is much different when it comes to life imprisonment. So I think distrust of the government is not a sufficient. I consider that a moral factor. And I just don't think it's as good an argument as he thinks it is.
All right,
That's my
court will
assessment.
recall 20 CR 1358, People versus Letecia Stauch. My understanding is that both sides are prepared to proceed to sentencing. Is that accurate? Prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense?
Yes, sir.
All right. Before we start, well, first of all, I assume that we're going to have some family members.
We have some family members and other people that were affected by this
Okay.
case that would like to speak, yes.
Sure. All right. Before we start, I want to remind everybody that I am the person that imposes the sentence in this case. That means that when you come up to the podium, you address all your comments to me. You need to do that in a respectful fashion. Remember the decorum. You guys have done great for the last 5 or 6 weeks. And I know we're at the end now, but it's still important to continue with that type of appropriate and proper conduct. So if there's anyone that is going to speak as to sentencing, you don't turn and face the defendant. All your comments are directed to me. In addition, Ms. Stauch, you'll have an opportunity to make a statement to the court as well. Same rule applies to you. Your comments are directed to me. You don't turn and face anybody in the gallery or anybody else. If you have any comments, you make them to me. So with that, prosecution.
Just before we get started, I just got a notification that it sounds like maybe on WebEx, your mic might be off, or I was just getting a notification that people are not hearing that.
It looks like it's on. Or my tab says it's on.
It is.
Okay.
It
He
is.
says it's working.
Okay.
It may not have been on a little bit ago, and we were having a technical issue, and I think it got restarted, so I think we're okay now.
Okay.
So, but if you continue to get messages, let me know.
I will do, Judge.
Okay.
The first person that would like to make a statement to the court is Nicole.
All right.
And I'll have each person spell their name for the court report.
Yes.
Yeah, the judge's admonishment obviously
Right.
is completely correct.
Just step up to the
like, yeah, direct your
podium there
comments to the
and
court.
just state your name and
Yeah,
then
it's
tell me what you
completely
had to
correct.
tell me.
So
Nicole Mobley, Nicole Mobley. I just want to initially thank you for everything that you've done through all of this, as well as the prosecution. This has been well over 3 years of a family, as well as hundreds or thousands of us who have gone through a lot. It's been hard. It's been heartbreaking. And to finally see some kind of justice, especially for his family, is incredible. And I just want to thank everybody for everything that you guys have done.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Jane?
yeah, fair enough.
Hello, Your Honor. My name is Janie Cadenas,
All right. Can you spell that last name?
Cadenas.
Okay, go ahead.
Also, like what Nicole said, wanted to thank you for making this such a fair and neutral trial through the process. I am here today as I have sat with the family for the last 3 years as a community member in Larson Ranch who has watched the turmoil that this has caused everybody in our community. 3 years ago, we heard as a neighborhood what happened, that a little boy went missing, and we rallied together in a way that most communities can never experience or imagine. We came together and we helped find ways to get media involved, to get search parties involved, to do everything we could to be of assistance to find this little boy, because Gannon wasn't just a neighbor, he was all of our little boys. For months and months until he was found, we were all scared to let our kids go outside because we were scared that they would be kidnapped. We didn't know what was going to happen. And through that process, we all came together and we met Landon and Al, those of us that didn't know them, and we built relationships and friendships and garnered a family relationship with them through that process. But this is just one thing that, as a community member, somebody who was a part of it from the beginning, that I can confidently say, this is the worst tragedy that anybody could ever go through and every parent's nightmare. And I have watched and held Landon as she falls apart time after time. But we are here today and justice has finally been served for Gannon. And we want to thank you as a community for that opportunity for this to happen today.
Right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Jeff Davenport, Jeffdavenport.
All right.
I am Gannon's great uncle. I'm Albert's uncle, and my sister Debbie, who hopefully will be speaking in a few minutes, is his grandmother. Because I am a couple of steps away from him in relation, even though I have personal memories of Gannon and the loving, wonderful young man that he was and the great man he would have been. I want to leave the depth of impact to his parents. So I would like to talk about the breadth of impact. The preciousness of an 11-year-old's life is beyond measure, and all other impacts to all the rest of us pale in comparison to the loss he suffered himself. But this now convicted murderer did not just murder Gannon. She murdered all of the love and joy and encouragement and security he would have brought to all those he encountered throughout his life. She murdered his children and his grandchildren and all of the joy and love and encouragement and security they would have brought to all those they encountered throughout their life, and so on and so on. She murdered his junior prom, his senior prom, his high school graduation, his college years, his career, his marriage, his retirement, and his golden years, and it just goes on and on. Because of her crime, all of our fragile trust in one another has been further eroded. It's not an exaggeration to say that millions of people throughout the world have heard of this crime and will, as a consequence, be less trusting and more suspicious of those in whose care they entrust their children, even those who have loved and cared for their children for years. And because of her specious, cynical, calculated use of the NGRI defense in this case, those who are truly mentally ill will be treated with more suspicion and may not receive the help that they need. The reverberations of her murder of Gannon will ripple throughout eternity, and the impact of her crime is truly incalculable. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Interesting.
Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Judge. It's Veronica Birkenstock, spelled Veronica. Birkenstock, Birkenstock. I am Landon's aunt, Veronica, or Aunt V, and his great aunt. Nothing in life prepares you for the murder of a child. No one ever thinks this can happen to your family. A little over 3.5 years ago, I got a call, a very dreaded call, that I needed to come and be with Landon. For over 3 years, I have dear left her side in all the hearings, all the motions, and all the hearings that the defendant decided not to come to because she didn't think it was important. But regardless, we showed up, and we showed up for Gannon. I want to talk about forgiveness today because as a Christian, I have to forgive, not because I want to, because human flesh does not want to. The judge today, on behalf of Landon and I, we want this court to know that we have forgiven Letecia for what she did. God is the ultimate judger. But I pray today that your judge will give her what she deserves on this earth and will let God do the rest in eternity. I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I would like to leave this Bible. And at some point in time, if you think it's okay, to give to Letecia as she serves her life sentence. And we hope that will be the punishment that you render shortly. But this is a life application Bible. For the rest of her natural life, I hope she will read the Word of God. And I hope that she will turn from her evil ways and the things that she did to our family. I have sat here for 6 weeks, and I have listened to the horrendous things that she did to my nephew. I don't want the last memory of him to be what she did to him. Our last memory of Gannon was one of fun, love, joy. So articulate, and despite everything, he was gifted and talented. He wasn't supposed to live. The day he was born, the doctors told us he had really no chance. He weighed 1 pound and a few ounces. I'll never forget the picture that Albert sent when he took his wedding ring and it fit all the way to his shoulder. For months, I saw Landon and Albert pray over their baby. And one of the happiest days was the day he got to come home. And I was there with them. I got to spend the first night holding him for the first time and looked in his beautiful little eyes, and he fought so hard to get there. His 11 years did have impact. And I want us to remember again, and it's who he was, not what this evil deed did to his memory. He is our hero and will always be our hero. Letecia tried to steal many things from my niece. She called her a drug addict. She called her homeless when she was in the hospital having her 3rd child. She was there for months and months trying to save her life and her baby. She wasn't homeless. Landon's a good mother. She loved her children. And she loved Gannon. And her only son was taken away by someone who was just ferociously jealous of my niece. With all that being said, I pray that you will give her the sentence that she deserves. But I also pray that God will forgive her if she repents and turns from her evil ways.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Allen?
My name is Bob Rogers, B-O-B, R-O-G-E-R-S. My wife Patty and I are grandparents to Lena and Gannon, who we never had the opportunity to meet in person. Over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of tears and challenges with Al, if we hopefully helped him walk through this tragedy. The person that comes to mind for me is Lena. Lena is Gannon's younger sister. And we have the opportunity to be grandparents to her. And she's a beautiful child. She sings beautifully. She's talented. What she doesn't have is an older brother to stand beside her as she goes through her life. She still mentions Gannon quite often. her brother. We never want the spirit of Gannon or the memory of Gannon to be lost. So I just am a loss for words. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I am Deborah Pierce, Pearce. Sorry. Ann's grandmother. And I just wanted to thank you, first of all, Your Honor, for this court, and everything that's been done, for everyone who has so carefully and impartially cared for this case, for this loss of this precious child. And I feel that if Gannon were here today, he would say, please protect my family and be concerned for the loss that they've had. This has gone from my children to my grandchildren, little children who lost a cousin who never understood why something like this could happen. If he were here today, he would say, please take care of my family. Make sure that they're protected as time goes on and as this life goes on. And obviously, to help us to go forward in this life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, Your Honor. My name is Landon Bullard, also referred to as Hyatt in this case, but Bullard's Bullard. I miss you, Gannon, and I love you to the moon and back again. I know every day you're with me and your sisters, but that will never be taken away. The ache that I have for you, to hold you, to hug you, to tell you how much I love you, and to see your smile and your innocence. I remember all the pain your dad and I suffered with having children. It was never easy, and we were always fearful through the process. On September the 29th, 2008, our lives were forever changed. Our first biggest blessing came into the world, weighing only 1 pound and 6 ounces. You fought all the odds and developed a personality and a smile that's larger than life. You became my hero that day. You forever changed my heart and my life, and that will never change. That is something that can never be taken away from me. You came into this world fighting. And unfortunately, you left this world fighting. Your Honor, she fought against someone that he loved and trusted. Someone that myself and Albert both trusted and loved. Someone who could never understand what it means to love or trust anyone but herself. For more than 3 agonizing years, I've often wondered what I may say, or if I would even be able to. For 3 years, I have questioned every single possibility and scenario. For 3 years, I have tried to forgive you, but I can't. I want to. But no parent should have to bury their child. No parent should have to see or hear the horrific things you have done to the whole family. She has taken away the most precious gift in this world. Not just my family, not Al's family, but your own family. She destroyed dozens of lives of people who never wanted to believe that she could have done this. She knew how special Gannon was, and she knew what meant to most to me. I, in my heart, can never understand her hatred and insecurities when it came to me. I did love her. Mother to mother, I trusted her with my children while trying to survive a complicated life with my third child. And she used every opportunity to write a narrative of my life to try to take pieces of my life. When she already took some of it, that still wasn't enough. She searched. I lost my place. I don't know where I'm at now. She searched so hard for love when all along she had it, but she took it for granted. I didn't hold anger against you then. I still kept my heart open to her. You had so much love from Lena and Gannon, from Harley, her own daughter, that you willingly subjected to the chance of serving time for her crimes. Such an indicator of her inability to love anyone herself. You had support, appreciation for me, even when we couldn't see eye to eye, because I valued her for helping me with our children when I physically couldn't. Even when I was fighting for my kids, as you wrote a false smear campaign against me and my children, and also Al. For me, I still appreciated that they were loved by you. So I thought. She had everyone fooled. She projected abuse and addiction claims against all of us, not just me, when all along she was the one harming innocent children. Anything to take the light off, manipulating us, breaking my kids, and murdering my son. I can't say that she ruined my life, because that will be some form of sick victory for her. Because even through this process, it's been a game to her. The people who listened doesn't know her style or her sly jabs. She's even made at Albert and I. They do not know the significance of certain things she says or does. But we do. Instead of allowing her to take that power of hurting me further, I wanted to tell you this. Let me tell you what Gannon has done. Even to this day, even after you murdered him and she tried to taint any positive image of him, he has caused families and communities to come together. Children and adults have given their life to Christ. He has called unity in times of trial. He is a hero. She even tried to steal that away. A cape, huh? The one image of Gannon that was created for the world. After it went national, TV begging for the return of my son, my hero. How dare her? How truly sick and cruel is she? You stole so much from this world. Gannon's cousins, aunts, uncles, sisters, new siblings, grandparents, and friends are missing a huge portion of their lives without Gannon. Lena is missing her brother. Your Honor, I've never seen a bond between two siblings so close as theirs. She had to take that. Why? I'm afraid we may never know that answer, will we? I show his baby sister, Nova, pictures and videos of Gannon so she will always remember who he is, because she stole him from us. He is not forgotten and never will be. And it's so sad to sit here today and face her, a person even Gannon loved, one that I know while she was attacking and killing him and fought for his life, he defended himself against her, still loving her. A love she never deserved from him for what she has done. While she is too much of a coward to even come forward with the truth, she owes it to Gannon. But the lack of remorse and the lack of respect to Gannon through this child, her lack of compassion shows me that she and we were all wrong. She manipulated all of us, and never loved Gannon, Lena, or Harley. I've sat here for over a month having to listen to her sick lies. Even as she tried to destroy who I was and Albert as a father, I've had to sit and listen and watch every reenactment of images no one wants left in their mind. You wanted to leave us with that, knowing it would torture us. But you underestimated me. I am Landon, Gannon's mom, and that will never change. Through my hurt, anger, and pain, I will never be the monster that she is. I can never be filled with the hate that her heart holds. I pray that we will never have to look at her face again. I will continue to hold on to my faith. Vengeance is not mine, as I surely wish it could be at times, but it's the Lord's. I have to trust in that. Thank you, Judge Warner, for your compassion, your patience through this trial. I want to thank the juror for their attentiveness and time that they took for justice for my boy, to the detectives, officers, legal team for every single second they've poured out into Gannon's case, and to the community for your countless hours. Tisha, that was her biggest mistake. You underestimated this community and this defensive team, Lorson Ranch. They searched for and fought for Gannon within hours, and they never believed your lies from the moment they started. None of these people ever gave up on him. You never looked. All of these people I will forever hold close to my heart. Always Gannon strong. My G-men forever. Justice has been served today. Your Honor, I pray that you just give her the best sentencing, the longest sentencing that you can. This will not bring my son back, but I can sleep soundly for the first time in 3 years, knowing that you can never harm, this defendant can never harm anyone again, knowing Gannon will always be a true hero in a cape. He will always be my son. That will never be taken away.
That was pretty difficult.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Allen?
Once I was 7 years old, my mama told me.
Really? We're doing singing now? Do we have to do this? Okay, I'm gonna meet.
It was a big, big world, but we thought we were bigger. Pushing each other to the limits, we were learning quicker.
Really?
Stauch, Gannon's father, capital Father. Last name Stauch. Stauch. I'm going to start with something from my wife, not to go out of order, but she didn't think she could make it through it. So this is my wife, Melissa, and these are her words. Some may say or think that I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Tisha. In part, that may be accurate, and I would be okay with that, because then Gannon would still be here. I, too, know the pain of losing a child, and there is no greater pain. We are now lifelong grief partners, as this is a lifelong journey of pain, with 2 sons waiting for us in heaven. Some words from my daughter Elena I will address in the middle of my speech, but they're written in yellow, so I don't know if I can leave it to a child. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever God may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. The poem I read is named Invictus, translated from the Latin means unconquerable. I quoted this same poem at Gannon's memorial here in Colorado Springs back in August of 2020. Why August of 2020? When his body was ripped to shreds on January 27th? Well, as we heard testimony to, his body was found 1,370 miles away. And then the process to identify his maggot-infested remains withheld him from us until July 2020. As I stated in my testimony on the stand, Gannon was born severely premature and barely filled my two hands the first time I held him. At the end of his life, after his body was cremated into a pile of ashes, he was ultimately no bigger than the first time I held him. As brutal as the wait became, I'm thankful to God and the bridge workers for finding him and returning his precious body to Landon and I. I quote the poem Invictus again, not to boast of my strength and perseverance, Your Honor, but to say to the world, I alone can control my actions and reactions. Your Honor, I refuse to allow anger to poison my soul and orient my life to a pursuit of vengeance. I refuse to allow pain to carry me through each day and promote the pursuit of medicinal retribution toward the offender. I refuse also to let my mind be clouded by inconsistency and emotions that deter me from the purpose in this life. Your Honor, the price I pay each and every day for this resolve is to only get pieces and parts of my son.
Damn.
Consistently through time. But the pain is too heavy and the anger too overwhelming and the desire for vengeance too vexing. Instead, each and every day I pursue peace. I seek joy in my life and let the love I have for my wife and family flow in and out of me like a mighty wave. As I told Tisha regularly at the end of our relationship, my joy is mine alone and she cannot rob me of that. I will learn to experience G more and more as time goes on, but as I did my best to instill into his precious soul, love, joy, service, and kindness are the pathway to take in life. This picture shows that in the 4th grade, he already had a mind for service. Throughout these past 3 years since Gannon was beaten and drugged, carved up, shot at point blank range and discarded like yesterday's garbage, I've encountered many people that would figuratively do the same to me. I've been questioned, compared as Tisha did to my abusive father, and ridiculed for my approach to finding Gannon. I hope now that the world has seen that I was assigned the most arduous task of finding Gannon in the only place that was possible for him to have been, in the mind of a killer. Were my efforts fruitful? I believe so. But from the moment I did not see the Volkswagen Tiguan, or however you say it, at French Elementary on that Tuesday evening, a clear direction for finding Gannon pointed directly.
Dude, some of you guys in
precisely
chat
at
need to
Tisha.
chill.
While others online,
I
some
swear.
who are even in the courtroom today, question my perceived lack of effort or concern, I stood still and stood firm in knowing that only one person had the information needed to find Gannon. Now I say woe to the person who questions a father's resolve when the safety and well-being of his children are at stake. I did not waver. I did not falter in the pursuit, nor did I allow the mentality of the mob to shake me. But it was only by the grace of God that Gannon's precious body was finally found. In Mark 4:39 of the Bible, in the middle of a storm, Christ arose and rebuked the wind and said, "Peace, be still." In times of trial in my life, from seeing my father being taken away in handcuffs, to seeing that sweet 1 pound, 6 ounce baby boy for my firstborn son being put into a Ziploc bag after he was born to help regulate his body temperature, and now searching for and never finding my son again, I have but one choice, and that is the times of trial and tribulation, to have that peace and be still. As I alluded to previously, that stillness does provide an easy target for many who do not understand peace, hope, and even faith. Some, including Tisha, feasted on my stillness, attacked, and yes, left several scars. One of these scars comes in the form of the financial and residential ruin that began in the early days of this ordeal. I'm just going to skip this part because I don't want to make this any more about me. I'm not seeking any restitution, Your Honor. For the $1.50 a month I receive from the defendant, Tisha, would just keep me connected to her for the rest of my life, and I don't want that. So absolutely no restitution, Your Honor. The murderer of which I speak was not always such. When I met Tisha, she was beautiful, extremely intelligent, as many have testified to, and a seemingly successful woman. A far cry from the nappy-headed, murderous, narcissistic, and arrogantly flippant human being that sits in our midst today. Having a background in teaching, social work, higher education, certified babysitting, and endless amount of credentials, that should render one trustworthy when it relates to the safety of children. However, although she remains too much a coward to state the facts of what she did to Gannon, too much a lily-livered, self-centered, pathological liar to ask for forgiveness, and too much the facade of one who actually cares for others to have taken her frustration out on an adult or one who could defend themselves, she will one day give an account through her words or through her time. Sending pictures of Gannon sleeping to Landon and I was telling, as the boy looked pale and absent of the energies that so defined him. This is what a happy, healthy little boy looks
Thank
like
you,
when he's
Sandra.
sleeping in the next picture.
We give memberships.
That's what a little boy sleeping looks like. These pictures on the screen are of a happy, healthy little boy that's sleeping sweetly, healthily where he lay. The impact Tisha had as a result of this heinous crime stretches far wider and far deeper than I could depict through my statement today. 2 other people torn to pieces as a result of this are Gannon's sister, Lena, and Harley. Speaking of Harley, I feel as though I've lost 2 children as a result of this tragedy, one of which I will never see on this earth again, and the other which I do not know if a relationship can be salvaged with. Now for Lena. The video you saw as submitted in evidence, her bebopping down the street, is actually an excellent depiction of Lena and her happiness and her joy in life. She is very loving, trusting, and at times way too social. Normally, you might be concerned by your little girl talking to the utility guy working in the front yard, but in this case, it was the inside of her own home that was of grave concern. Nonetheless, her loss, Lena's loss, is like none I can even imagine. She lost her big brother, her only brother at the time. I still do not know if she has fully processed or fully understands the gravity of the situation, but regardless has pressed forward and is thriving as best as she can. I am so proud of her. And these are her words. Once again, they're in yellow, so I'll do the best I can. And this is what I asked her if she wanted to say anything to Tisha, and this is what she said in her sweetest mind that she has. That you do not do that to people, especially your stepkids. And that it is never all right to do these things. How sweeter of a response can you get? Now for my precious, premature firstborn son. Get it? I never in my wildest dreams would have ever thought you'd be in danger, buddy, or I know I wouldn't have not left you. At home with what turned out to be your murderer and the last person to ever see you on this earth. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that sucks.
Through a father's eyes, children are truly a gift from God and among the best and most perfect creations God can make. Your Honor, I do need to clear one thing up with the defense. It was said both in the opening statement and in the closing, somehow Gannon has been compared to a demon. And I understand the process, I do. But if they want to take the case up of Gannon being a demon, I will line people up from Alaska to Denver to Colorado Springs, all the way to South Carolina to testify against them. Gannon was nobody's demon. I don't care how much anyone was abused or anything, he was not anyone's demon. Oh, okay. Gannon was truly my buddy. Very recently, before he died, the most alarming thing he did was call me dad. Up until age 10 or 11, I was daddy. But in the last months of his life, I was just dad. A signal that he was coming into those junior high, pre-teenage years. Another amazing thing that is he finally started asking me regularly to play ball with him. He was never too much into sports for most of his life, but that last 6 to 9 months, he really started enjoying playing ball. Some of the most memorable times were him running little 5-yard football routes in the street in front of our house. Most of the time he dropped the ball, but he kept asking, let's do it again. I almost had it that time, Daddy. Oh, and that Nintendo Switch. One of the most difficult pieces of evidence to give up was his Nintendo, because that probably has the most of him on it. Knowing I may never see that again is truly devastating. For him, many of his games were not just games, but a challenge to overcome, as I made him beat specific games before I would buy him the next one. I remember not long before he died, him beating the old school Zelda game he had. As he felt he was getting close to beating the final monster, he paused it, ran upstairs, and we sat at the kitchen island, and he beat it right there together with me. He was as excited as I ever saw him. With all of that and all of the pain of only being able to see him play through the one YouTube video he was able to make, which I'm about to play, I can sleep in peace at night because the father I am and the son he is was culminated as always in our final embrace as he ran out of arms and downstairs to watch Pokemon, I in his heart and he in mine. If we could try to play that video, just maybe the first 10 or 15 seconds of it.
Hey guys, and today I'm about to play some Sonic Mania.
Alright, let's zoom in.
And yes, cameraman is right here. Derpa Solar White Gaming. And yes, sign up for our channels. We're going to be doing a lot of these together. Give a shout out to him, his channel, Freedom.
Thank you. I was one of the many he hoped to make and the only one he was actually able to make. I do want to add something that I don't have in my speech that me and Landon already had a conversation about this, and I owe her an apology as well as she already gave me one, that we allowed Tisha to manipulate us into some of the pain and disagreements that we had between one another. And Landon, I'm sorry. But I will say this. Tisha was not the glue to keep everything together. She was not the answer. And this is not a jab, Landon, okay? But Lena still lives with me. Tisha, you were not the answer. Now, Your Honor, if I have any influence on the final sentence for Tisha, first I ask to be stripped of my last name immediately. It's nauseating and infuriating to hear her called Miss Stauch this past 3 years. Secondly, I ask that for every mile she drove Gannon across the country, she spent 1 day in solitary confinement.
Nice.
I think that took us in between 3 and 4 years. After
That's not
that
how
journey
works,
is
but-
complete, I recommend her sentence be equal to every year she stripped off of Gannon's life, which for the average male in America right now is 77. So that would give her 66 more years in addition to the 11 he lived. Lastly, for every year of Harley's life that she abusively manipulated that child, she should have an additional year of prison. Adds 21 years to the total. I think without parole, that should suffice. I pray also that Tisha lives the fullest and happiest life that any inmate possibly can live. I also pray that every night before she falls asleep, her last breath before she drifts off sounds just like the breath that she describes Gannon breathing as life left his body. And that all through her sleep, she dreams of all the fun they had at Disney and other places we went throughout our time together. And that every morning as she is about to wake, the end of her dream, the last words Gannon spoke to her, screamed or cried, "Tisha, stop! You're hurting me. Why, Tisha? Daddy, help me. I want my mommy. Why couldn't you let her just be a mama's boy? That's all he wanted to be. He just loved his mama. I wish she would tell me what those words were so I would know." And then as she speaks those words, the sound of a gunshot goes off and she wakes. Every day and night, I pray she relives just those moments and then wakes up to a nice, warm, and kosher breakfast. In conclusion, I would like to share a picture of Gannon in his final state and find a resting place, and thank everyone that has had a positive impact on my family and I. To everyone that has shared the positive impact Gannon has had on your life, from a proud and broken father, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. I'd like to pause until we can get that last photo up.
Not getting a feed from your laptop. It's fine. Oh, there it is.
I'm trying to remember like who
Thank you,
Letecia
everyone.
Stauch reminds me of, like with her long black hair. Hmm. The Ring movie, Bellatrix Lestrange isn't actually a bad call. Bellatrix Lestrange. Yeah, it's not a bad call. Chick from the Ring movie. But Bellatrix Lestrange is, yeah, when she had her head down, it was tilted down. And when her head is down and tilted down, her face looks thinner than it does right now. When her head was down and tilted down and her face was thinner, Bellatrix Lestrange is probably a good call.
I think that concludes the comments from family and friends, Judge. So I'm not sure if you're ready to hear sentencing comments from me or if you want to do a different process.
Let me hear the sentencing comments from you. The last person that I always hear from in the sentencing is the defendant. So
Okay. Can I have just a moment, Brother?
you may go ahead.
Yeah. The Ring, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, just in the abundance of caution, I would ask the court to keep restitution open for a period of time. Obviously, Mr. Stauch is not asking for any restitution, but there may be some that we want to submit, and so I would ask the court to keep that open.
Well, based on the new case regarding timelines, I'm going to give you 49 days to submit an order.
Thank you.
If there is an objection, you'll need to file the objection within 14 days after that. And that'll get us all right. So 49 days, 14 if there's an objection, and if there is, we'll have a hearing.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Judge, I'm not going to make a long drawn-out statement. I think the comments from the family and friends of the Stauch family said it better than I ever could about the impact that Gannon had on their lives. The loss of Gannon from his family and to this community will never be made right through this process. We all know that. The defendant, through her own actions, tore Gannon's family apart, tore this community apart. At the same time, I've never seen a community come together the way this community did in the face of such tragedy. Over an 11-year-old boy who most of us never knew. The defendant manipulated this community, Gannon's family, investigation. Been a prosecutor for a long time, Judge. You've seen a lot of cases. I've never seen the kind of horror that this defendant brought down on a community and a family. The torture that Gannon had to suffer in the last moments of his life are unspeakable. No matter what sentence you give us, Judge, and I know what that sentence is going to be for the most part, no matter what the sentence is, we'll never bring Gannon back. But it will go a long ways towards healing this community. I hope healing Landon. I hope healing Al.
Yeah.
They're going to live the rest of their lives second guessing every decision they made as it relates to leaving their children in the care of this defendant.
Yep.
Through no fault of their own. Judge, on count one and count two merges into count one. The only sentence available is life in prison without parole. As to count four, tampering with a deceased human body, driving Gannon's body over 1,300 miles away, hiding it from view, hoping it would never be found. Asked for the maximum sentence of 12 years, Judge, and that it be running consecutive to the life in prison without parole. Tampering with physical evidence is an F6. It's 1 to 1.5 years. I ask that you give max on that as well and run that consecutive. Judge, we do have that other pending case, 20 CR 3170, hanging out there. In the grand scheme of things, well, I'd love to prosecute this defendant for that charge as well. In the interest of justice, I would like to see this defendant in Department of Corrections custody as soon as possible. And so we are dismissing that count or that charge. Thank you, Judge.
All right, at this point in time, the defense has an opportunity to present statements in mitigation. Mr. Tellini?
We understand what sentence is as a matter of law. It's out on the council. Don't have pre-sentence confinement. Court staff said she ordered that she be allowed to proceed in.
Give me an order.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Ms. Stauch, I heard what your attorney had to say, but I need to hear it from you. You have a right to address the court at this point in time regarding any matter that you want me to consider for sentencing. Do you have anything that you wish for me to consider, ma'am? All right.
I think he might have asked for protective
Go ahead.
custody,
Consider this or
which would be the same, incidentally, as solitary. So
like to request.
the prosecution might, the dad might get his wish.
I don't
couldn't
have the
hear what he
ability to
said,
do
but-
that. DOC determines where its inmates go, and I'm not going to make a recommendation one way or the other. And I'm going to apologize before I do this. I've heard a lot. I want to take about 10 minutes to put my thoughts in order. I'll come back with my sentencing at 3:25.
All rise.
Fair enough. Judge wants to take a minute to think. I mean, the sentence is a given, but he wants to take a minute to compose his thoughts based on what he heard, which, can't blame him for that. Pretty intense stuff. Not that you would expect anything less. What charge were they dismissing? I couldn't hear. Some pending charge. I don't know. I assume it was something relatively ancillary, but I couldn't hear quite exactly what they were dismissing. It was like, yeah, just something that was technically pending, something ancillary. It's just like, let it go. But yeah, fair enough. So, but a lot of intense thought, and not that you'd expect anything less, from the mom and dad, and that she was in the care of Letecia Stauch rather than her mother or father is, I don't, it's just, let me phrase it this way. Whatever faults the victim's mother and father can say to have, whatever faults they can have, whatever sins they've committed in their lives or errors they've committed in their lives, is, to my mind, immaterial to the immediate situation. And we don't judge the quality of the victim because the issue is that life is inherently in and of itself precious. And if you rob someone of 70 years of life or 5 seconds of life, those are considered legally the same because they weren't your 70 years and they weren't your 5 seconds. And whether a person is good or bad is mostly immaterial for the same reason. If you kill a nun versus you kill a coked out homeless guy, your justifications for doing so, your reasons for doing so might be a mitigation or an aggravation, but the quality of the person themselves is not a factor, right? It's not a factor. No one knows what the future, and no one knows what that nun or that cracked out homeless guy would have done in the future in terms of what life they would or would not have lived. No one can see the future, and even if you could, it's not yours to take away. So I was troubled by some of the comments in the chat, to be honest, because some of the comments in the chat seem to be negatively judging the mother or the parents for their errors in life, whatever those would be. I don't really care, to be honest. The only thing I care about is that this child was in the custody of Letecia Stauch, and Letecia Stauch deliberately, maliciously killed this child for no apparent reason that can be determined. The best motive anyone can point to is that it was inconvenient for her. So she did it because she didn't want to care for the child. And she did it simply because she was out of her own frustration, her own narcissistic needs. And she did it for no reason that makes sense. So that's the only thing that really matters to me is why, what is her rationale? As we're trying to judge her, if we had the ability to assess this in terms of a penalty, we had the ability to assess what we thought was morally right. Her motivations and her reasons would be relevant, but she has no motivations or purpose that make any sense. She doesn't even have classically selfish reasons. Like she did it because, there was a huge life inheritance that she was going to get and she did it for the money, There's nothing even like that. There's just no rationale for it. And yeah. As I said in chat, by the way, in answer to the question regarding her last name, I'm not aware of any process that would allow for a person to petition for someone else to change their name other than fraud would be the only one. But then they would have never granted the name in the first place. But if someone changed their name for fraudulent purposes, like if I called myself George Clooney for the purpose of trying to confuse people that I was George Clooney, right? That would be the only circumstance I can think of where you could potentially try to change someone else's name. But that's not the circumstance here. So I'm not aware of any process that would allow for her name to be forcibly changed. And assuming such a process did exist, it would be outside the jurisdiction of this court. That would be a civil thing. Someone's name is a civil question, not a criminal question. So even assuming it were a remedy that could be ordered, this court would not have the power to order it. Unless, of course, there's some specific statute in place. But since none was cited, I'm going to assume none exists. And I'm not aware of anyone, so I'm going to assume that there's no power for this court. The power would be in the family court, assuming they have the power at all. So, So I'm not aware of any such power, but maybe some exists somewhere. I mean, Rob would be more aware because this would be up his domain. And as a family law guy, he might be aware if there's some law somewhere on point. I'm not aware of any. So we're just waiting for the formal sentencing. We're just waiting for the judge to give formal sentencing at this point. The judge said he'd be gone about 10 minutes, about 2 minutes left for the judge to come back. I'm certainly not aware of any mechanism to change her name against her will. I'm not aware of one, but, you know, I'm not an expert on such questions. Well, yes, it would be a petition, assuming that such a thing could be done. I'm not aware of such a thing. I'm not aware of such a petition that could be filed. But yes, I mean, I know it would be a petition. I'm just not aware of any legal authority for it. But as I say, I'm not an expert in every law everywhere, as much as I try. Also, to the extent I'm an expert on every law, it's more federal law, because I'm much more an expert on federal law than any state law. Not for at least the reasons that, you know, it's more or less uniform, as opposed to state law, which is, you know, kind of all over the place. So, you know, I can quote you a lot more federal law off the top of my head than any state law. In fact, for that matter, I'm not that great on Virginia or Texas state law, despite being a Virginia and Texas lawyer. You know, I'm not really a great legal expert on Virginia or Texas state law, but they gave me a license anyway, even though I don't know it. That's okay. We'll try not to tell them that part. My expertise is much more federal in its nature than state. So, yeah. 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 I tricked those Texas guys. Well, I tricked them hard. I think I know Texas law. Lol. Good times. Okay. Yeah.
What do you want?
Thank you for the 700 of you who are here. And thank you for allowing me to engage in a self-deprecating laugh. That was fun. Right, it's Rain. Thank you for saying I sound like the expert, but like any
parent's worst nightmare.
Well, never mind.
Is getting a phone call letting them know that something has happened to their child. How much worse must that nightmare be when law enforcement asks not for a picture of your loved one, but rather DNA and dental records? I've also heard it said that one of the worst tragedies a parent can experience is to outlive a child. I have known people, both professionally and personally, who have gone through that. It never leaves them, but the sharpness of the pain does diminish to some extent over time. I cannot fathom the pain Mr. Stauch and Ms. Bullard have experienced as a result of the defendant's actions. A sentence in a criminal case such as this will not change the fact that their son's life was taken from them, and no sentence I impose and nothing I say will ever change that fact. Ms. Stauch, you betrayed the person you loved enough to marry. You told your husband lies and took away someone he loved. You took away every day that Mr. Stauch or Ms. Bullard could have had with their son. When you take a life, regardless of how you do that, you forever alter the future. Neither Mr. Stauch nor Ms. Bullard will ever see their son graduate from high school, go through the joy and the pain of that first love, or get married. They will never know what kind of impact their son may have had on the world if only he had lived to become an adult. And had Gannon's body not been found, they never would have known what happened to Gannon. They would always have had a lingering doubt about what happened to Gannon. And I cannot imagine the pain and sense of loss associated with that. You betrayed your daughter, Harley Hunt. I cannot imagine the emotional impact that you have had on her due to your selfish and calculated actions. This is a young woman that trusted you to put her interests above yours. This is a young woman who believed in you and believed you were innocent of this crime right up until the time that you pled not guilty by reason of insanity. And she still loves you. That's natural for a child, and it doesn't matter how much older they get. You were supposed to protect her. I cannot imagine the guilt she feels or the therapy that she will need to address your betrayal. There is no evidence that she had anything to do with the murder or your cover-up of it, but some people still think that she is somehow involved. She wasn't. Incredible strength of will and courage that it took for her to come in and testify is amazing to me. But she did it because, as she said, it was the right thing to do. And while thankfully she didn't testify, let's not forget about Lena. You betrayed her too. You took her brother from her and forever altered her family dynamics. She will always wonder who she can trust and will always feel that loss. She was there the day you killed Gannon. His body was still in the house when she got back from school. At some point, you even claimed this 8-year-old girl helped you move her brother's body from the basement to the back of your car. That's just simply not true. As she gets older, Lena is going to want to know more, and she's going to want to know if there was something that she could have done to prevent this. I hope she comes to realize that she has no fault in all of this. You betrayed your stepson, and you took his life. You took away everything he was and everything he could ever become. I can't imagine the terror and confusion that he must have felt in the last moments of his life when he knew his life was being taken by someone he trusted to protect it. Your attempt to raise the claim that you did this because of your adverse childhood is also a betrayal of people that have mental health issues. It is no secret that there is a large part of our population that has mental health issues. It's also no secret that our country and our health system could do a much better job addressing mental health issues than it does. However, the number of people with mental health issues who become violent is small, and the number who become murderers is smaller still. Your claim that a mental health issue caused the murder in this case is a disservice to all those who struggle with mental health issues every day. This isn't the first case I have presided over in which sanity or a mental condition of the defendant has been raised as a defense. I have had cases where the defendant's mental condition caused the defendant to act out in a certain fashion. But even in those cases, I have never seen conduct like this. I understand the claim of dissociative identity disorder. I have seen something resembling that, and I have seen defendants with schizophrenic disorders. I can understand those. What I have seen is that the mental condition causes the person to act a certain way, and when they realize what they did, they are astonished by what happened, or they have no memory of what happened. Your claim is that it was another personality that murdered Gannon, but there is no time during the minutes, hours, and days following the murder where Letecia came out and wondered, gee, why am I carrying a body around in my luggage?
That
That
it's funny because
isn't
of its
credible.
absurdity. That's why I laugh, right?
You
'Cause,
knew what
geez,
you
why
were
am I carrying a
doing.
buddy
You
around
made
in
a
my
number of
luggage?
clear and conscious decisions to
absurd.
cover or disguise what you had done. Claiming a lack of motive is a common defense tactic, and it can be a sound strategy. The truth is, however, that it only takes a moment to make a bad decision that results in disastrous consequences. And oftentimes, we never know why a defendant chose a particular course of action. However, that does not mean that they did not intend to undertake a course of action. Sometimes, as in this case, the likely explanation is anger. An 11-year-old boy with burns who feels that he's not being taken care of. An 11-year-old boy on the verge of being a teenager. Those of us who have lived through people or kids with that were teenagers, we know how that is. It is not hard to imagine Gannon saying something, "You're not my mom. I want my mom. I want my dad." And that would be enough to make you really angry. But anger is not an excuse. A defendant is responsible for the choices they made and the actions they undertook, even though those choices arose out of or were motivated by anger. It's clear that you hated and were jealous of Landon Bullard. You saw yourself as a better mother than she was. It's clear from the evidence that you had some resentment from being left with Mr. Stauch's children. It's clear you had some resentment toward Mr. Stauch because he traveled as part of his job. Some of that manifested as early as Al's assignment in Alaska when you made allegations against the people in his unit. That caused Al to have to return from Alaska. And in one of the phone calls that were played for the jury, you talked about having to take care of his kids while he was away and what a good mother you were. It's clear you felt trapped. You wanted out. You were searching for a new job and a new location in Florida. Mr. Stauch had been gone on his new assignment for less than 2 days when the fire in the basement occurred. I can imagine that you saw your whole future consisting of taking care of Stauch's children while he was off doing his thing, and that's not the future that you wanted. I can imagine Gannon, at some point after he sustained his burns, telling you wanted his real mom and how that comment would have made you angry. You took your frustration and anger for the marriage, the child care, the absence of Al, and even living in Colorado. You took all of that out on Gannon. The evidence suggests you first stabbed Gannon repeatedly, 18 times. Based on the number of defensive wounds, he was clearly conscious for some of that. He was certainly gravely wounded. And chillingly, it would also explain how you were able to mimic the sound of Gannon breathing in one of your sessions with Dr. Lewis. Those were probably close to his last breaths. He was dying but not dead. The evidence could also lead one to conclude that he either fell or rolled off the bed where you shot him in the head and then beat him with the butt of a gun or a baseball bat. That would explain the blood found at different levels on the walls in Gannon's bedroom. I'm also reminded of the look you had on your face when you slipped your handcuffs while being transported back to Colorado and attacked Deputy James. shudder to think that that was probably the last thing that Gannon saw before he died. You have shown no remorse throughout this process. Instead, you've made a choice to build a web of lies. When you gave an interview to Detective Jessica Bethel on January 29 of 2020, you told her, you lied to her about Gannon running away and that he was actually taken by a guy named Eduardo. When you explained that to Detective Bethel, you said you needed to lie because you didn't want to face the consequences. You told her that you were trying to come up with a plan about what you should do. And finally, you told her you really thought you could fix this. I think that's true. You lied because you didn't want to face the consequences. You needed to come up with a plan to fix this, and that plan involved covering up what you had done. It involved lie upon lie. But you slipped up at various points and let kernels of truth escape. In one conversation with Mr. Stauch, you told him the FBI needed to close the borders of Colorado and needed to close I-95. I-95 doesn't go through Colorado.
No, it doesn't.
It's an interstate that runs along the entire eastern seaboard.
Yep.
It's also not
Florida to
far
Maine,
from where
baby.
you dumped Gannon's body.
Yep. Whoops.
When questioned by Detective Bethel, you told her that Mr. Stauch might also make up some kind of story about you coming at him with a knife. You said you would never use a knife like that. Yet Gannon was stabbed 18 times. Your actions in this case also show a very conscious attempt to avoid responsibility in this case. You started out with the story that Gannon had run away. You gave some hints that it might be related to bath salts or drug use by Gannon. You stayed with that story until you were called into EPSO for an interview. You knew they weren't going to buy the story that Gannon ran away. Then you came up with the abduction. And you stayed with some iteration of that for a long time. But all of those versions had one thing in common. You were always the victim. In one, you're beaten and raped and Gannon was abducted. In one, someone stole Gannon out of a truck in the parking lot. In another, you let someone drive Gannon to a hospital to take care of a head injury that he had after falling off a bike. In all of them, you could claim it wasn't your fault. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Then you got arrested. You stuck to the story that it was someone else that took Gannon. During the hours that you spoke with Special Agent Grusing, he told you he thought sometimes good people do bad things and sometimes it's an accident. Then they found Gannon's body. Then you saw the mountain of evidence against you. And this is a mountain the size of Everest. What was your position after that? Well, it was an accident. And you, Letecia, didn't even do it. It was Maria Sanchez. You carefully crafted your new story to continue to avoid responsibility. It also allowed you to take advantage of the out that Mr. Grusing and Mr. Stauch suggested much, much earlier when they asked you if this was an accident. Now it was an accident. Your Maria Sanchez personality shot Gannon by mistake because she thought he was an intruder in a cape. Multiple personalities is not credible in this setting, as regardless of how many personalities you have, you only have one body. I have presided over cases where a mental disease or defect prevented a defendant from remembering the course of events, including the commission of the crime. Without exception, those defendants have been terrified when contacted by law enforcement because there was a period of time in their lives that they could not account for. Their body may have sustained an injury, and they don't know how it happened. They may have some new object in their house or on their person, and they have no idea where they got it from. We all have free will, and we all make choices based on that free will. The people who suffer from the mental disorder you claim are terrified because their free will has been taken from them, and they are being subjected to things and experiences they don't understand and don't have any recollection of. You didn't behave anything like that. One of the purposes is to impose an appropriate sentence for the criminal conduct that occurred. Another purpose is to punish an offender by imposing a sentence that takes into account the seriousness of the offense. Yet another purpose of sentencing is to prevent crime and promote respect for the law by providing an effective deterrent to others likely to commit a similar offense. Anyone who's been in my courtroom before knows that I've said sentencings are the most difficult thing that I do. That's especially true in cases where someone has lost his or her life. Nothing I or the law can do will ever bring that person back. I have handled hundreds, if not thousands, of criminal cases over the years. I think at this point in my career, I've presided over something like 200 jury trials. I've sentenced hundreds more defendants pursuant to plea agreements. This is not the first murder case that has come before me. This is not the first case I have presided over which involves harm to a child. This is not the first case I have had where a person who was in an unhappy marriage committed a crime. Sadly, statistically, there is a high correlation between violent acts, including murders, and family members. I have had a number of cases which have demonstrated one person's capacity for cruelty toward another human being. I can, however, say without hesitation that the facts in this case are the most horrific I have ever seen. Your conduct in this case deserves the maximum punishment that I can impose under Colorado law. As such, with respect to the charge of first-degree murder after deliberation, I remand you to the custody of the Colorado Department of Corrections for the remainder of your life with no possibility of parole. With respect to the charge of murder in the first degree of a child under 12 by a person in a position of trust, I remand you to the custody of the Colorado Department of Corrections for the remainder of your life with no possibility of parole. Those two sentences will merge. If you have questions about that, you can ask your attorneys. With respect to the charge of tampering with a deceased human body, I'm also going to sentence you to 12 years, followed by a 3-year period of parole. That sentence is to be consecutive to the life sentences that I've already imposed. With respect to tampering with physical evidence, I'm going to impose an 18-month sentence. That sentence is also consecutive to the sentences for the murder charges that I have imposed. I also understand, with the consent of the prosecution, and I'm assuming no objection from the defense, that I will dismiss all the charges in 20 CR 3170, close that out, subject to restitution, give the people 49 days for restitution, 14 days for response, and if there's an issue, we will set it within the 90 days, from. I think that resolves all outstanding matters. Is there anything else that the prosecution wishes for me to address?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Defense? Yes. Court will be in recess.
All right, guys, that's it. We'll see if they actually, she's in cuffs, see if they actually haul her ass away here. Well, I guess not. Well, sadly, that's the end of that. Well, that's a depressing tale brought to a conclusion. The most serious, most disturbing facts this judge has seen: 200 jury trials. 200 jury trials this judge has seen. And the most disturbing facts this judge has seen. And this judge has kind of seen it all. Right? And heard it all. This one of the I guess perks of being a judge is you get to hear from experts all the time. in all kinds of cases, right? You get to hear experts all the time talk about everything. And you get to see people in all kinds of situations. And you're like, being a judge, you're a pretty well-educated person in your own right to become a judge. Most judges are pretty smart. You have to be reasonably smart to be a lawyer. There's certainly exceptions. Some judges are idiots. But most judges are pretty smart. And most judges hear a lot of things and they soak up a lot of knowledge and they become pretty well educated in a lot of fields. In the same way I've become educated by reading a lot of legal opinions. When you read legal opinions, because the law touches so many things. When you read legal opinions, they touch on so many things. You gain a little bit of knowledge about all these fields, whatever it is, medicine or psychiatry or whatever. You get a little bit of knowledge. And it's one of the nice things for me about law is that you get to learn about kind of everything a little bit because the law touches everything a little bit. And he's like, this is the worst I've seen. And that's heartbreaking. For the person in chat who asked about why 2 different counts of murder, it's because there's 2 different ways to get there in this particular case, right? So you'll have a count for every different way to get to murder. So it is not unusual for a murder statute to have multiple different subparts. It depends how the murder statute is written. And the same is true for any statute, by the way. It's not just like a murder thing. Other statutes are written the same way. So some statutes are like 1 sentence long. It shall be illegal, with malice to take the life of a human being, and that's all that it says. That's all that murder says. So sometimes a murder statute is all of 10 words long. And sometimes murder statutes are much more detailed, right? It shall be murder if, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and subpart 1, 2, 3, and subpart 1C, 1A2, 5, paragraph B, blah, 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 right? So sometimes, and again, this is not just a murder thing. Sometimes it's arson, sometimes it's theft, sometimes it's whatever, and so basically you have one charge for every way to get there. So was it murder because she killed somebody? Or was it murder because she killed someone who was under the age of 12, who was in her care? Right? So those are 2 different reasons it could be murder. Now, for double jeopardy purposes, you can't be tried twice. You can't be convicted of the same crime twice. So that's what he said, like they merge. They merge. So you only get 1 sentence because you can't obviously commit murder more than once. So is it murder for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason, right? And so you've seen that before. And we saw that before, for example, in the murder of Avery Brooks was his name, where they convicted him of murder 4 different ways. So how about murder 4 times? And then, it's just like they merge. So all the sentences merge. And so, if for some legal reason, one of those were to fall apart, then the other charges remain. So if for some reason, like on appeal, it's like, well, as it turns out, he wasn't a minor. He was really, 21. Well, just fooling everyone this entire time. What are the odds? Right? So if for some reason it falls apart or whatever, then that count would go away, and obviously the other count would still be there. So that's why they charge murder multiple different ways. That's why they convict them of murder multiple different ways. And it does occasionally happen. It happened. It happened with the Beltway sniper, I think. Malroy, I want to say, where one of the theories of his murder fell apart after conviction. And his appeal was successful as to one of those counts. I think it happened with him on the Beltway sniper. But of course, it didn't matter very much. It was a technical win, right? So it's yes, okay. So yes, we thought it was murder for these 3 reasons, but as it turns out on appeal, no, not so much with one of those. So now it's only appeal for these 2 reasons. These murder for these 2 reasons. So, you're now still guilty of murder for these 2 reasons. So, okay. So yeah, it does occasionally happen where on appeal, one of the charges falls apart or something. And so that's why you charge them multiple ways. That's why you convict them multiple ways. And yeah. So that's what happens. And that's why you have that concept of merger, because it's the same charge. So like, yes, all the murders merge. And then of course the disposal of the corpse, the abuse of the disposal of the corpse is a separate charge, right? Whether you murdered somebody and whether or not you like abuse their corpse are obviously completely logically different. Those are two completely different things, right? You could not murder the person and, you know, improperly dispose of their corpse, and also vice versa. You could murder them and not do that. So there's no reason for those charges to merge because they're completely logically distinct, and they're two completely independent charges. So, and because they are separate, then you can put them consecutively. So how about life plus 12 years, plus 3 months probation, plus whatever. So how long is the life sentence? Life, until you die, until you draw your last breath. That's how long life is. Yeah. And in some countries in the world, when they say life, they really mean something like 25 years or 30 years. So the question actually is not inherently absurd, by the way, because in some countries in the world, when they say life, what they really mean is 25 years. But when he said life, he means, how about till you stop breathing? How about forever? That's what life means in this case. Yeah. How about forever? Forever. Forever. How about forever? Plus 12 years. So after you die, how about 12 more years? Until you die again, I guess. Well, how about 12 more years and then I guess you get to be free. So, yeah. No chance of parole, no. Life without parole. Life without parole. So, yeah. Yeah, no chance of parole. How about till you die? No chance of early release. And after you die, how about you serve another 12 years? Yeah. So, yeah. And of course, sometimes, you know, depending on the circumstances, you'll have life plus. So sometimes they're distinct charge. Sometimes they're distinct murders, right? So you'll have multiple different people. So you'll have like 3 or 4 life sentences on top of each other, which I believe was the case, for example, in Murdaugh. I'd have to double check, but I believe Murdaugh got technically 2 life sentences stacked, although I can't remember if they were stacked or not. I'd have to double check. But since he murdered 2 different people and they're obviously logically disconnected, right? There's no reason that, you know, because you killed the one person, you had to kill the other, or vice versa, right? I believe Murdaugh's sentence is stacked. So I believe he has life plus time. So how about life, and then how about it again, and how about some more years? Yeah, Daryl Brooks, for example. Yeah, so there you go. Those stacked. How about life plus life plus life plus life plus life plus life plus 600 years? Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Daryl Brooks is exactly that. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. How about till you stop breathing, and then we do it all over again 6 more times? Yeah, plus 600 years after that. So yeah. Yeah. So yeah, they mean till she stops breathing. And she can appeal, but on what basis? You know, so you have to find legal error. You know, so, you know, and the amount of criminal convictions that result in being set free is pretty low. Like I'd have to double check the numbers, but you're talking like the number of criminal appeals that are technically successful is like 2%. Right? So the number of criminal appeals that are technically successful is like 2 appeals. Practically successful, it's like, I don't even know. It's low. You're talking maybe 0.2%. So, you know, maybe 1 out of 500 where you get like an actual practical victory. So, you know, it's like, we're going to appeal. No, you're not. You know, I mean, prosecutors do this fairly frequently, and most of them are not completely incompetent. You know, because not only do you have to find an error, you have to find an error that matters. That's the kicker. right? Finding a mistake is easy. It's impossible to have a trial without mistakes. It's just not going to happen. You can't do it. It's not going to happen. To find somewhere that it's completely error-free, it's not possible. Finding mistakes in trial is easy. Finding a mistake that it matters is borderline impossible. It's like, prove to us this mistake would have resulted in a different outcome. Go. And also, of course, remember on appeal, and this is the critical part, on appeal, and this is the part that people forget, right? Innocent till proven guilty is over, right? People forget that part because it'll occasionally happen where I cover appeals, right? And I'll cover people with appeals. And every once in a while, it'll be like, we'll cover it and be like, there's some evidence that is actually kind of favorable to the defense. And I'll see it in chat. They'll be like, what about innocent till proven guilty? And I'm like, but that's over now. That happened. That's why we're on appeal. What do you mean innocent till proven guilty? That happened. So what are you talking about? It's over. They're guilty now. So presumption of innocence, no. So on appeal, all the presumptions flip. Right? The presumptions all flip because you're guilty now. So it's not, here's some evidence that makes me look not guilty. That's not the issue. It's not, here's some evidence that makes me look not guilty. It's, here is a fundamental legal fail that deprived me of due process, or here's such, or the overwhelming manifest way of the evidence is so high that no reasonable jury could possibly convict. No reasonable jury could possibly convict. It's impossible, Your Honor. How the hell did this jury convict? It doesn't make any sense. Have you looked at the evidence? Oh my God. You know? You know? But as long as you be like, well, some reasonable jury somewhere could convict. You know? The jury is entitled, of course, to believe evidence as they wish and not believe evidence as they wish. So it has to be pretty bad, right? It has to be pretty bad. You know, here is a convicted perjurer thief. He tells one story. The convicted perjurer thief tells one story. And the 10 nuns tell the other story. And the jury's verdict only makes sense if they believe the convicted perjurer thief. Right? The juror's verdict of guilty only makes sense if they believe the convicted murderer thief and disbelieve the 10 nuns. Well, the reasonable jury could believe the convicted perjurer thief and disbelieve the 10 nuns. That sounds like a thing a reasonable juror could do. Conviction affirmed. Because the juror is the finder of fact. So, you know, you don't want to lose at trial because, you know, it's not going well. So sure, she'll appeal. So find me a fundamental structural legal error or go home. Which, you know, yeah, good luck. You know, yeah, good luck. So, yeah, she's going straight to prison. And the judge, by the way, didn't strictly speaking deny. Well, I guess he kind of did. The judge, because the defense asked that she be housed at a particular prison, and the judge simply said, well, that's a matter of the Bureau of Prisons, and I'm not going to provide a recommendation. Which, you know, fair enough. You know, that's not really the judge's province about where she's held. That is a matter for the Bureau of Prisons. So the defense is like, oh, we prefer she be held at this facility. Judge is just like, it's outside of my, I just know she's going to prison forever. But where is open to debate. For example, in the Colorado movie shooting, remember when the shooting in Batman at the Batman theater? Last I heard, that guy was serving time in federal prison, I think in Connecticut, despite the fact that he was convicted on state charges. They reached some sort of agreement, which sometimes happens, like for prison sharing. Apparently, they were so concerned. Apparently, they were so concerned about his safety in the Colorado prison system that they struck some sort of deal with the feds. And I believe he is now serving state time, mind you. It's not a federal charge. He wasn't convicted federally. Nevertheless, he's currently serving his time, I believe, in a Connecticut state prison because they reached some sort of agreement to have him there. So, that's up to the Bureau of Prisons to figure out, where he's held. Yeah. So Aurora, yeah, the shooting in Aurora. He was convicted of state charges, not federal, but last I heard, he was being held in a federal prison, notwithstanding all that. So, yeah. So that's one of the reasons the judge doesn't intervene, because it's up to the Bureau of Prisons to figure all that out. So. Will she get any counseling in prison? I don't know. That's up to the prison system in terms of what they do or do not offer in terms of counseling or anything else. I would expect the answer is no. She will not get counseling in prison, but I wouldn't swear to it. If she acts like a nut in prison, that's up to the prison system in terms of that, Angela. I saw your question from earlier. If she starts acting like a lunatic in prison, that's up to the prison system. Probably throw her in solitary, I would imagine, without any particular treatment. I would not expect her to receive any particular treatment or psychiatric care within prison. But I don't know that for sure. Yeah, you can't post links. So if you tried to post a link, you can't post links in chat. Their links are blocked. You can't post URLs. That's for everyone's safety, of course. In respect to the question of is it possible for Al to get the court to get her last name changed, I don't know of any such process. I don't know of any such process. That is outside my knowledge base. That would be a question for a family law attorney. Probably one in Colorado. Rob might know, but as a family law attorney, he might know a little bit about the laws of other states, but that is well outside my area of expertise at every possible level. Family law is one area of law, is definitely by far and away, and somewhat by choice, my weakest area of law. I don't want to do family law. Family law makes me sad. Family law is just pain and misery. So somewhat by choice, family law is my weakest area of law. So when you ask me a question like, is it possible to get her name changed? I'm like, I don't know. Because that's a family law question, and that's well outside my area of domain. And so I don't know. I'm not aware of any such process. So I've never heard of such a thing, but it's outside my area of expertise. Thank you, Jules Buddha, for the gift memberships. As always, it's appreciated. For all the gift memberships. We're not waiting for anything at the moment. We're just talking. I'm just answering some questions, Thirsty. We're done. I'm just providing some closing thoughts. I was just providing some closing thoughts and providing some legal answers to some questions I saw pop up, and some commentary about the question about prisons and talking a little bit about how that works and stuff like that. Just trying to answer questions, provide legal education, good stuff like that. Admit when I don't know the answer to something like can he force her name change? I'm like, I don't know. It's outside my knowledge base. I don't know. Are there press conferences? There probably will be. I'd imagine there are going to be some press conferences. No death penalty in the state. No, it is currently 5:09 p.m. Central Time. Colorado would be an hour behind me, so it's 4 o'clock in Colorado where she was convicted. All right. Yeah. There's no way for court to force a name change. Yeah, I'm certainly not aware of one. I'm not aware of any process for that. So. Why do boomers listen with their phones without headphones? Well, sometimes they forget headphones. Sometimes I forget headphones, and I have to do the thing where I put the phone up to my ear to listen to something because I forget my headphones. So could be that. All right, I guess I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you for all the guys, all the people joining me today. Thank you for all this. My thoughts are obviously with the family of everyone who was impacted by this situation. This is horrible. And I'm glad that you are getting some sort of relief. And I hope that, the knowledge that she'll wake up every day staring at some bars and a cement wall will bring you some sort of peace. And yeah, and that's all I have for now. Just a kind reminder to hit the like button on your way out. And if you're not subscribed, please, and tell your friends, retweet this video, share it on social media, tell people about the uncivil laws, all that good stuff. We got so much law to talk about all the time, perpetually. So we'll be on later. I've been on civil law. Until later, I hope everyone has a great day. Bye-bye for now.